What I did, after very full deliberation and under a heavy and solemn sense of responsibility.
Abraham Lincoln was an effective leader that led the North to victory over the South due to the fact that he listened to others, created the Emancipation Proclamation, and made good wartime decisions. Though Lincoln was very decisive, he had the ability to listen to others and their advice. Many people working under him criticized and critiqued Lincoln's goals and decisions involving the dispute between the North and the South. William Seward, the Secretary of State, was one of these people. He tried to override Lincoln, and though this didn't happen, Lincoln listened to him about wanting to make any big decision involving the Emancipation Proclamation. Until the North won a substantial victory, Abraham Lincoln also needed to listen to the people in order to be re-elected. Between the years of 1861 and 1865, Lincoln's opinion on slavery changed immensely.
It wasn't until Lincoln was working in the White House that he started having relations with blacks, and this opened his eyes to the tragedies that every single one of these people went through and how their lives were affected by it so immensely. He changed his mind over the time period of the Civil War. He went from caring more about preserving the Union and reuniting all of the states together to realizing that something had to be done about slavery. And if it wasn't for the Emancipation Proclamation, I'm not sure that blacks would be free today. Lincoln is responsible for the freedom of many, many people, and that's something that we cannot forget as a nation.
Congress began taking action against slavery in the spring of 1862. The first steps taken were abolishing slavery in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and setting aside $500,000 for the colonization of freed slaves. This still wasn't enough to make an impact. Slaves could only be freed on a case-by-case basis, and with millions of slaves in the United States, this wasn't a sufficient means of emancipating a whole people. January 1st, 1863, after 3 months of preparation, President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation came into effect. Looked at carefully, it is clear that Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation was not just a tactic to free slaves. By issuing this document in the way that he did, President Lincoln appeared fair, gained new black soldiers to fight for the Union, and kept the border states on the north side. He threatened the Southern way of life by freeing slaves. Lincoln turned the Emancipation Proclamation into one of the Union's best military tactics. Lincoln was not a natural strategist. He worked hard to master the subject, just as he had done to become a lawyer. Lincoln could have responded in a variety of ways to the action of the Southern states. He could have permitted them to leave. He could have attempted some sort of compromise. He could have bided his time, hoping that Unionist sentiment in the South would reassert itself. Finally, he could have employed force to coerce the states back into the Union.
In a strictly military sense, Lincoln understood that the key to victory for the Union was a strategy of concentration and time. For the simultaneous application of military force at multiple points, making it difficult, very difficult, for the Confederacy to defend its territory. Although it was not successfully implemented until 1864, Lincoln articulated the principle early in 1862 when distressed by the immobility of his armies. He issued his General War No. 1, directing Union forces to move in concert on Washington's birthday.
In the first days of his administration, he managed the crisis over the resupply of Fort Sumter in such a way that the rebels fired the first shot, enabling Lincoln to portray the Confederacy as the aggressor, and helped unify the North in support of his hardline policy against the secessionists. In the end, Lincoln's ability to listen to others, his role as the great emancipator, and his wartime leadership led the North to victory over the South.